That is a lie. But for wakataka kundiita izvozvo ndakabva ndangofunda zvangu majaiva naini tikati aya kuona kunonzora wakutumira iponisa waya kuona kunonzora wakutumira iponisa waya kuona mina waya kuona kunonzora waya kuona mina wakutumira
uliweka makosa anafikiria hivi ndio pati yake wewe ndiye kubatwa mteneza na fikiri kama raistonga services apo
the reason why takaenda kunorwa hondo yerusirungu ndozvatofana kuremekedza saka aiwa takanyora kuzeki yakasha vanoti kana tinobira sarudzo nyora ipasi mutiuzire ndobva takumbira timu yedu yakanyora document atakainopa zeki kuti hero havana kana kupindura nanhasi vasati vapindura takatipei maanza.
Music is to the soul food to the tummy. In contemporary societies, people have relied on music, on art, to send messages, to express how they feel, and to capture their history and their culture in music. You cannot fully understand a people if you don't understand their art and music. Zimbabwe is no different. But in this episode of The Free Talk, we talk about the role of music in the political discourse of this country. We talk about how music has been used from the time of the liberation struggle as the people of Zimbabwe fought to attain democracy, to present day, where music has become the center of politics, where the major political parties and major political antagonists in this country, that is the CCC, then the MDC, and ZANU-PF, have invested a lot in terms of music to communicate different messages at different times of our political discourse, from Robert Gabriel Mugabe to Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, from Morgan Tsvangirai to Nelson Chamisa. Join me after this break as we discuss music, politics, and democracy in Zimbabwe. Welcome back to this, The Free Talk, in partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Now we're going to be talking music, people, music, power, music, culture. Here on this, The Free Talk, with me, your host as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now, earlier on, I caught up with Christopher Mchangwa, Fadzai Mahere, and we discussed the role of music in Zimbabwe's contemporary history and contemporary past. We also discussed music, especially with the controversy around what has happened with Winky D's song Imoto and his album Eureka Eureka, and how Jah Praiser has become the mascot of ZANU-PF's president Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa with his song Dara Chauya Outonga Kwaro. What role does music play in the politics, in the social discourse of Zimbabwe? Here on The Free Talk. Now here is Christopher Mchangwa, the ZANU-PF spokesperson, and Fadzai Mahere speaking to me earlier on.
I mean, obviously, music is part of our political consciousness, and this is not unique to Zimbabwe. Everywhere in the world, art reflects society. And if you've got poverty, hunger, injustice, corruption in society, it will reflect in your art. And music is not unique in this regard. Even during the Chimurenga War, the liberation struggle, we had musicians whose job it was. And so we're not surprised that there are conscious artists. Music does play a role, for better or worse. We saw what music did in Rwanda, but we obviously urge our own artists to, sing in line with what's good for the country. Sing in line with what's good for society. We all know that we want a country that's free from corruption, where everybody can put food on the table, where everybody can send their kids to school and live a decent life. You don't want vakareba vachichka zvevapfupi. We don't want that in any sort of society.
Well, music has always been part of the mobilization or celebration or mourning of any society since times is historical. And when the political temperatures rise, obviously there's also a similar creativity, because artists are there to reflect what is going on in society, the events of the particular time, the mood of those events, and the promise of those events. So they do compose, some to extol candidates whom they like, others to criticize. That's okay, but let it be in good taste. Let it not be music being used to fund division, disunity, and other nether activities which will not help society progress. I
mean, obviously, I don't want to, because of the environment we find ourselves in, I don't want to put any artist on the spot. But I think if you just look at the landscape in Zimbabwe, citizens, the people know, people aren't stupid. People know which artists vocalize their concerns. People know. Even when they ran the coup, they had their own musicians who sang for them. And so I think for 2023, we continue to call upon the regime to ensure that all artists are free. And this includes artists that don't sing for us and that don't agree with us.
Well, no, I fought in the Independence War as a national liberation combatant. I was trained in Mozambique. And by 1977-78, a new musical genre came into Zimbabwe, which is Chimurenga music. And Thomas Mapfumo was, of course, one of the main exponents. But we also had Oliver Mtukudzi and the others, Eye of Liberty in Bulawayo. They were all involved in music, a music which reflected the mood of a people who are now yearning for their independence, where they were aware of a new vitality in society and who were proud that our military virility was being restored by the forces of ZIPRA and ZANLA under the Patriotic Front.
artistic freedom is so fundamental to a constitutional democracy. And so we say, no, we want a Zimbabwe where any artist, whether a musician, a creative, is free to practice their art without, any sort of clampdown or violence or being attacked or being shut down by the police.
So the music of that time reflected this new aspect of development in our society, where we are beginning to assert ourselves as an identity as Zimbabweans with our own culture. And it fed mainly on the resurgence of the mbira as the main instrument of inspirational music in Zimbabwe. It's spiritual to our people. It goes back for many years. So this music popularized mbira, the mbira playing. You know that in the colonial era, people were actually discouraged or even taken to jail for playing mbira. Yeah, they wanted us to adopt to Western musical instruments. But our little mbira has survived because of the impact, the emotional impact which it has on the people of Zimbabwe as they go about, be it work, be it play, be it school.
Now thank you. Now we're going to be crossing over to Gaddafi Wells, who went out there to get us music compilations, what they meant, how they were brought in, and the role that they have played in the political journey of Zimbabwe, the formation of new political parties, sustaining people in power, and making emotion felt through song. Over to you, Gaddafi Wells.
Mbare Chimurenga Choir, Dread Reckless, Paul Madzore, the late Bodagezi, Tambaoga, and recently Chief Wenje have all undoubtedly played an interesting and inspirational role each election cycle, as song and dance fire up rallies and even at times send the message deeper, better than speeches delivered by those seeking political office. The history of song as an instrumental fuel to the struggle of democracy starts way, way back in time. For many Zimbabweans and contemporary historians, the liberation war struggle for freedom was driven by songs at Pungwes, which at that time carried a message of resistance and hope. At the height of former President Robert Mugabe's desperation to cling to power, regardless of his old age, songs were crafted both for him and his supporters. For him, it gave him strength to hang in longer, while for his foes in the party, a signal that the old Willie Fox was not going anywhere, and for the opposition, a clear signal that ZANU-PF was not willing to substitute their long-time leader. The song Chimbotongai Makadaro sent the message. Even as violence became the center of electoral campaigns, ZANU-PF had a subtle message hidden in their music, telling all who cared to listen that Mugabe's power was driven and kept through Mamonya. There was no attempt to keep it silent. The more militant song came from Bodagezi, with open declaration that ZANU-PF was a bloodthirst organization. At the time, ZANU Ndeyeropa was the in song, many lost limb and life for power's sake.
Viva Zanu Zanundeyero. Viva Zanu Zanundeyero. Viva Zanu Zanunde Kushubega. Viva Zanu Zanundeyero. Viva Zanu Zanundeyero. Viva Zanu Zanunde Kushubega. Viva Zanu Zanundeyero. Viva Zanu Zanunde Kushubega.
The fight against the West, especially that directed to Tony Blair, was also turned into song, with the now forgotten Tambaoga singing, "The only Blair I know is a toilet."
The bullet that I know is a toilet.
To send a clear message across, both to the opposition and internal threats on his grip to power, Mugabe and his spin doctors invested heavily on song and dance. Jonathan Moyo, a minister then, used jingles such as Hondo Yeminda ad nauseum to prop the regime. These jingles were on every radio station, on TV, and in people's ears by force. Pax Afro was even created to marinate the people with a message of war and sacrifice. The late Chinks was also a major voice pre- and post-liberation struggle. His powerful voice carried so much, rather enough to put anyone who cared to listen under a spell. The lyrics were a work of mastery. Even today, many can't resist his song Maruzaimi Vapambe Pfumi, loosely translated to mean "You have lost, you colonizers." Late Morgan Tsvangirai's team responded to these songs with their own, in an effort to tackle social ills and send their political messaging while keeping the brand MT alive. They also used song to warn external forces who were accused of trying to break the MDC, which had given Mugabe a rude awakening on its formation in 1999. Internal conflicts within the MDC were also captured in song, as Tsvangirai split with Welshman Ncube but managed to keep the party going. He was later to beat Mugabe in the polls but could not get power.
Izuza machinja takatevera nuvena sivanda vakasara takaziya zvichiko kakavadzana nenyaya yekurwira kutonga Famba changira itende, famba changira itende, famba changira itende, zamara taturanyika.
In 2008, songs from the MDC's Madzore made serious impact as it appeared Tsvangirai was romping to victory. Songs such as Mugabe Ukabieva Kungepwere, Sem na Tombana gave Tsvangirai and his supporters wings. As the economy collapsed, there were songs to paint the picture to the ordinary, while pinning the blame on the ruling ZANU-PF together with then Governor Gideon Gono. Then the politics was fluid. Violence was high, but communication was necessary. It had to be done through song.
Wakauya wondo yeminda, ndokuzouya tsunami, vana kono vairara, kana nechikoro vaidzidza, izvo vedu vana vachitambudzika kana pokutsambira musoro.
As the politics of Mugabe and Tsvangirai reached its dawn, new songs had to be crafted to announce the entry of the new. Emmerson Mnangagwa, president, and Nelson Chamisa, opposition leader. Mnangagwa came on the back of Ja Praiser with his song Kutonga Kwaro. He even crafted his own signature dance as he was catapulted to office on the back of a gun and tanks.
Tizikewo epano ndini mwenda mberi ndakuchinja mutemo sarura yodura dzanzika ngoma nyangwe huku dzamaundura ndakuchinja mutemo sarura yodura dzanzika ngoma nyangwe huku dzamaundura erasvika kutonga kwayo ngoma paindorira ngoma yamakachaira rinofadza nendera gambara makachaira kutonga kwayo kutonga kwayo kutonga kwayo kutonga kwayo kutonga kwayo kutonga kwayo.
To deal with the thorny Chamisa, ZANU-PF birthed Chief Bwenje with his hit song Musangano Kumasero, one of the best songs in ZANU-PF political spaces. Laden with powerful lyrics, a hot pot of satire and scorn, a song meant to rejuvenate the base and paint a picture of a Goliathic ZANU-PF, which can't be failed by being woke on Facebook and Twitter.
Kamberi uko musakanga mapofu kumasero terera soko gakamarati sangano wakazimba kumasero uko kumasero anamai sangano kumasero amai umesilika terera kumasero samba yekutanga samba yekutanga una kumasero samba yekutanga ofetika terera kumasero yekutanga famba unozanyika yako unaonera mwira topaonosha msika wacho namo munachimukira paFacebook na paTwitter usene masikata chikotuka nyika yake aida kufadza varungu kushaya chimwe chavanorumbidza chenyika yako unoti varungu vanga yakazotovakira nyika yedu kuno inovakwanesi iwene.
Wenje goes after government critics like Hopewell Chingono, telling him his social media fame won't dislodge Mnangagwa and his government. A whole verse dedicated to Hopewell.
Chikanzana Hopewell mandikanya kuserera paFacebook muchituka kaganda renyu muchida kufadza vana John White vakatishungurudza nguva yondo vachitsvanyisira vana vevatema ukaona takota rondeyandeya ita mutengesi samuwe ona takota rondeyandeya ita mutengesi samuwe ita mutengesi samuwe ita mutengesi samuwe ona takota rondeyandeya we ita mutengesi samuwe kumasero uko kumasero anamai kumasero kumasero amai.
The song Idipe came to solidify Mnangagwa's grip on power internally ahead of what many viewed would be a divisive 2022 Congress. The songs sung ahead of meetings and congresses had an intimidatory signal towards opponents. It creates forced consensus, making it difficult for objections once everyone sings a song of endorsement. The Chamisa faithfuls hit back with their own song, Sianainae Chamisa. At a time he took over from Changirai and was facing resistance internally and externally. The song was more to give the new entrant some energy and confidence. It appeared to work. In an attempt to send the message that only Chamisa can save the country from collapse, another song was birthed, Mushawa Pararanero. The economic collapse, the social services collapse such as hospitals, transport sector, and other utilities such as electricity. The song says hope can only be found in the opposition leader. They call on their leader not to be swayed or to turn captured in the song and cheuke. At the birth of a new party, Chamisa used Ricky Fire to entertain the crowds, but retained the party voice to send the party message. The song Shokoreyelo Ngarifambe, Tisu Nyuchi Dzinoruma almost became signature songs as the newly formed Triple C ramped up support ahead of the March 26 by-elections. Political analysts added their voice to the importance of song in the political sphere, especially in Zimbabwe.
Oh, the music has played a very important role in, for starters, political mobilization. You see, particularly for the nationalists, right, coming into independence 1980, they continued to use music the same way that they had used music during the liberation struggle. So Chimurenga Umvukela songs that were used to mobilize the masses, to take up arms against the colonialists. So that is the that's what has continued even today. People relying on music. But why music as opposed to other forms of political mobilization? Music, okay, music is entertaining, isn't it? So it plays that double role, It entertains, but at the same time it socializes, it educates the masses. Political parties or politicians can relay their message better through music than maybe through a manifesto or through pamphlets or through other materials or paraphernalia. So music plays a very important role in mobilization. It educates as well. So you can think of any other function that the media plays, and you can just replace that with music. So music plays that journalistic role. It informs, it educates, it raises awareness. So politicians rely on music because people easily identify with music. It's music, we use it on day-to-day basis, sing songs even in the bathroom, in the kitchen, so it's part of the culture.
Well, music is very important in articulating mainstream politics in Zimbabwe. It has been very instrumental not only in post-independent Zimbabwe. Even during the liberation struggle, music was used for so many reasons, chief among them to articulate the objectives of the liberation struggle. When Zimbabwe attained her independence, particularly in the context of post-2000, we witnessed once again the appropriation of music that was used to also explain power contestations between ZANU-PF and the MDC formations. The notable musical groups that emerged, especially in post-2000, is Mbare Chimurenga Choir. We had the likes of Born Free Crew. Not only did we witness music that was pro ZANU-PF, but we also had music that was aligned to opposition political parties such as the MDC formations. You remember the likes of Paul Madzore, who actually produced music that was also aimed to counter a narrative, the political discourse from ZANU-PF aligned musical groupings. So what it basically means is that music is a site of power contestations beyond entertainment or education. In Zimbabwe, music is actually a weapon of political communication. But what you also need to put into context is that such a phenomenon is not only synonymous with the Zimbabwe. In East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, it has always been there, and even post-independent African states, it is still happening. I may want to draw your attention to, for example, South Africa.
Ayasaba makwala ayasaba makwala.
Oh, yeah, it depends what period you're looking at. But like I said, land, in terms of the so-called third Chimurenga, land was very central, in terms of mobilizing people, in terms of making them understand the importance of land. You can, I think some of the musicians who sing about, the late Chinks Chingaira, trying to link the land question then in 2000 with the land grievance during the colonial period, the liberation struggle. So I think that's one area where we have seen music being deployed to mobilize people, to help people understand the importance of land in the political discourse. But also issues of corruption. I think you mentioned Thomas Mapfumo. Thomas Mapfumo has been very instrumental in singing about such social vices as corruption. And in some instances, the politicians have responded by way of policy, by way of making some key institutional changes or policy changes in response to issues that would have been raised by musicians. So again, we can see that music plays a very central role in terms of, exerting pressure on the authorities so that they can act, so that they can respond on issues that are raised.
Umsholozi became a household name during the time in which former President Jacob Zuma was vying for state power. It is a song that was used to demystify any negative portraits against a former President Jacob Zuma until it helped him to silence his critics. So basically, even that is also connected to Zimbabwe. You now have the likes of Seguru Wenje. We have got musicians such as Ja Praise, Kutonga Kwaro, etc., etc. So music remains a very, very significant platform to articulate politics of the day in Zimbabwe.
That has always been there. When you have got musicians who sing about politics, and it shouldn't be criminalized, really. When you have got musicians speaking, it's just like what I said earlier. I want to say, if you look at it closely, the musicians are playing the role that journalists play. You know, if you are saying journalism plays the watchdog role, the musicians also play the watchdog role, isn't it? They are looking at the authorities. They are looking at the people in power. They are looking at people who occupy public office. They are looking at how public resources are used. They are looking at social vices like corruption. And that's what they sing about.
The key important point to take home is that music in Zimbabwe is actually an alternative voice, a voice that cannot be found in mainstream media organizations here in Zimbabwe for various reasons. So it is that kind of an alternative voice, that bottom approach voice, that kind of a voice that resonates with the ordinary people, especially towards electoral times. It is not only about articulating electoral issues in Zimbabwe, but even socio-economic issues. Music has been used. You recall the likes of Kariko Galena de Jachat in around post 2000. He channeled a lot of music that was directed at articulating economic management, economic policies of former President Robert Mugabe. We have artists such as the late national hero Oliver Mtukudzi. He had a lot of songs that until this day actually resonate with our times.
So I think that's how we need to understand the work of musicians. Some people want to sing about, say, for instance, land, considering how central land is to a lot of themes, land, corruption, social services, and so forth. So musicians, because they are part of society, they observe what is happening in society. They experience some of the challenges. They are also victims of corruption and so forth. They look at what's happening and they sing about it. We take, for instance, during the COVID period, musicians played an important role to inform members of the public about the pandemic. So I think music really needs to be given that respect in terms of the role that they play.
You recall artists such as even Thomas Tavire Nyika Mkanya Mapfumo. There are some of his songs that, although they were produced some years back, they still speak highly of our present times today. Music such as songs by Mapfumo, such as Hondo. We have got songs such as corruption. These are issues that can sometimes cannot be fully accommodated in mainstream politics in Zimbabwe. But musicians and artists, they have that duty of being the alternative voice. It is interesting that political parties in Zimbabwe, they are actually aware of the power behind the music. That's why I find out that they also are responsible for creating certain musical groups that also speak against their political contenders.
The campaign trail is about to open. We will be on course to check and pick up the new songs along the way and how these will influence the results. The role of art in a democracy or even under an authoritarian regime can never be understated. From the time of Chimurenga to this era of social media, from Thomas Mapfumo to Madzore and Chief Wenje, music remains the educator, the soother of souls, and the force that shakes many to action. In whatever sphere of life, politics, romance, sport, or art itself, art is never for art's sake. Art is for the people always. Gaddafi Wells, HSTV News and Current Affairs, in partnership with Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. Back to you, Dara.
Thank you very much. That was Gaddafi Wells with the collection and understanding of music, the role that it plays. Is art for art's sake? Is art just a simple avenue of making money for artists? Or it is the food of the soul, as sadza is food for the stomach? Now, this was the Free Talk. This is the Free Talk with me, your host, Dara Blessed Mklang. Now, let us understand. I want us to understand. You can never fully understand the people or their culture if you do not understand their art, their music, and their language. To stifle artists, to stop their creativeness for the sake of political advancement is killing a generation. Music must go on. Nobody should stop reggae. I'll leave you listening to Hosea Chipanga's Dai Pasina Kupindira Kwaishe, one of my personal favorite. Chogadi Paspano, Taiwana Moto. Musatuone Se Moto. This is me, your host, Dara B. Mklang, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Until next time, thank you for joining us.
chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe nechokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe kana dzimba dzedu dzingadai dziri dzavo mawanzira vanoita dzimba dzavo vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu mumwe chete vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu mumwe chete vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dai pasina kupindira kwaishe nechokwadi pasi pano